Recording in progress.
It is now 7 o'clock. I call to order our City Council meeting for Monday, July 1st, 2024. For all those that are able, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. With that, we have a new council member here, Jason, that we will swear in.
Don't swear at him too much.
Come on over, sir. They're gonna see ya. Come on over.
He said he's the
You're for
boss.
the community, they gotta see you. Buddy. Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I state your name.
Jason Friend,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
or affirm that I am a citizen
or affirm that I am a citizen
of the United States and state of Oregon.
of the United States and state of Washington.
Washington.
I apologize. I work in Oregon and I used to do a lot of that.
I was wondering what happened.
I'm a citizen of the United States and state of Washington.
United States and the state of Washington.
That I am legally qualified to assume the office
That I am legally qualified to assume the office
of City Council, position number 7.
of City Council, position number 7.
That I will support the Constitution
That I will support the Constitution
and laws of the United States,
and laws of the United States,
the state of Washington,
the state of Washington,
and the city of Woodland.
and the city of Woodland.
And that I will faithfully
That I will faithfully
and impartially discharge
and impartially discharge
the duties of this office
the duties of this office
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
Soccer.
I need your signature here, and we'll let you sit up here. But before we do that, we're going to take pictures for you and your family so that they can be recognized as well.
All right.
Okay? So family. I know he's got family here. Come on. Come on, who's got a camera?
You got your phone.
I'll let you take one by yourself, and then I'll jump in. Don't be bashful, kids. Be proud of your dad. All right. All right. Congratulations, sir. Congratulations, Tim. Proud of them. Look forward to working with them. Have a seat, Jason. On the far right, next to Gabe. All right, with that, Amanda, can you take roll call, please?
Councilmember Rounds.
Here.
Councilmember Burke.
Here.
Councilmember Dowdy. Here. Councilmember Hall.
Here.
Councilmember Frymark.
Here.
Councilmember Houston.
Here.
Councilmember Friend.
All right. With that, we will move into our presentation of Exit 21. So I think everyone knows that we're spending about $2.5 million, $2.6 million, having Kittleson and Associates lead a project and a survey on Exit 21. So one of the things I did, I meet with them. We have bi-weekly Wednesday meetings, and then every quarter I want them to come to City Council, talk to the community about what they're doing and what we're progressing on that project. So I've asked them to come up and give a brief presentation on it, and then for the community to ask questions on it, because again, Exit 21 is important to our community. So come on up, gentlemen.
All right, good evening, council members and members of the Woodland community and city staff. Anthony E. with Kittleson and Associates. Thank you so much for just allowing us to come to the city again, just provide a brief presentation. We have about a 10 to 15 slide presentation, and I have a coworker here, Darren Hippensteel with Kittleson as well. He'll kind of co-present with me, and then we'll open the floor, as the mayor mentioned, in terms of any questions and answers. But next slide, please. So this is just a brief presentation overview. We want to spend the bulk of the time talking about the progress that we've made to date and some updates and a lot of good meetings that we've had with not only the City of Woodland, but with FHWA as well as WashDOT and Cowlitz County. We'll go through the work plan and schedule, and that's something that's going to be pretty constant. As the mayor mentioned, we want to try to be here at a minimum on a quarterly basis, and so we'll want to walk through the council as well as the community, the work that we've completed to date, and then what the future looks like in terms of some of the key activities coming up. That's the current and upcoming activities, and then we'll talk through a little bit more of the next steps. So next slide, please. So progress to date, and maybe just a little bit of a recap, as well as we started the project earlier in the year, and a lot of it was that initial scoping exercise working with not only the City of Woodland, but specifically WashDOT, FHWA, the Diking District, as well as the Army Corps of Engineers. And so to date, we've actually completed, I'll call it 99%, because a lot of the survey work is complete, and we're actually working in those CAD files today. We were actually here, and you may have seen some of us. There was about probably 6 to maybe even 10 of us in vests walking through the community, working with city staff last week. We had initially completed the bulk of the survey work to be able to understand the lay of the land and understanding sort of what's above ground, surface levels, as well as below ground. So we were what I'll call is really taking that survey data, walking through the actual job sites, looking at sort of different types of key elements in terms of the existing infrastructure. And we spent a little bit of time actually at the I-5 bridge as well. I think most people know one of the plan, or one of the improvements that's part of the plan, is to create a pedestrian and bicycle path, but it's going to require us to do some modifications to the bridge structure there. So we had one of our structural engineers, one of our teaming partners from PBS, meet us out in the field walking with the city as well, and so we spent a little bit of time at the I-5 structure as well. Another big task that we're making progress on is just the levee coordination with the Army Corps of Engineers as well as the Diking District. So we're still working with them right now. We have submitted a permit and information to be able to start doing some drilling, so our geotechs can come out to the field to not only get some of the drilling and the soil samples that we need for the project on the roadway and other elements, but as you all know, there's the levee that goes through the city as well. That takes some additional coordination that we're still working on with Cowlitz County. Once we sort of get their buy-in on the locations at which we need to do those core drillings, we'll start doing a bit more coordination with the Diking District as well and the Corps of Engineers. In parallel with all this, so we have the survey work, we have the geotech and some of the structural work. We're also trying to complete a lot of the we had submitted to WashDOT, which they're taking a look at right now. And then I kind of mentioned this already, but last week we did do the site visit, and we were able to kind of take that survey and be able to kind of go through the community. And we looked at everything from the street lights to the traffic signals to the existing signs that are posted everywhere. We looked at inlets. We looked at quite a number of features around the I-5 structure as well. So these were, we were basically split up into 2 teams, and that's probably where maybe some of you saw a couple of groups of people in vests walking around with pieces of paper, taking a lot of pictures, but we were really taking that field survey and making sure that things were captured accurately so that we can take that survey into actual design. Next slide, please. So this is a long list. This is the work plan that we had originally started, and this is the same work plan that we had presented in front of the community during the previous quarter. So the public involvement is really ongoing. This is one activity that we're doing right now in terms of the city council meetings, the city's website. We're going to continue working with the city to make sure that we're providing updates not only to the community, but to a lot of the stakeholders as well in terms of WashDOT, the FHWA, as well as the Army Corps of Engineers. The survey I talked a little bit about, but there's a long list of information there. Everything from the survey, we're starting a little bit on the environmental side. The noise analysis is being started as we speak right now as well. And we're still kind of scratching the surface right now on some of the stormwater as well. Geotech is a little bit on hold until we get that permit from the Army Corps to be able to start doing some of the drilling And as I mentioned before, we had our structural engineer out here taking a look at the structures out there. So a lot of these tasks are really underway. We wanted to highlight the biological assessment because that's something new that this group probably hasn't heard as of yet. So the next couple of slides, we're actually going to talk a little bit about this biological assessment and then talk a little bit about how this impacts the scope schedule as we start to move forward. And I'm going to basically turn it over to Darren Hippenstill to kind of walk you through a little bit more about the biological assessment and then just some of the impacts that it has as it relates to the schedule.
All right, thanks, Anthony. Good to see you, members of the council and mayor. Maybe the next slide. You know what? I lied. Go back one slide. Sorry about that. Don't get too far ahead of myself. So, as Anthony mentioned, one of the tasks that we'll be getting started on next year at this point is the biological assessment. We weren't anticipating the need to have to prepare a biological assessment for the project. We were expecting when we started this effort that we would be able to utilize WSDOT standards for the bulk of the work that we were doing, and the project would be qualified given the source of the funding. I won't go into a lot of the boring details of why that didn't work out, but there are certain pollutants that and where the funding is being routed, not through WSDOT but directly to the county, that affects our ability to actually use those WSDOT standards. What that means is that we will have to do essentially an analysis of the project and the impacts that it can have on endangered species, document what the project will do, and then we'll work with the federal agencies on any potential mitigations that would need to happen with the project. That's a long process, unfortunately. What that means, we will do our design up to about a 60% design level and submit the biological assessment to FHWA and WSDOT, who will be sort of in that lead role working with the other agencies for consultation. That process, once we submit, is about a 2 to 3 year process. So we'll go through the schedule here in a minute, where we had anticipated having all of the design done to get to construction at the end of 2026. You see in the updated schedule, and you kind of see it here on my slides at the bottom. The design, PS&E, and the bidding and construction support are grayed out. Those dates and time will be determined at a future date once we have a little bit more understanding of what the biological assessment requirements are going to be. Now, next slide, please. So, as I said, the schedule gets affected by this process and the documentation and really just the coordination and consultation that it requires with the many different federal agencies that we'll have to work with. So our original schedule had us pushing towards a 30% design in January of next year and a 60% following on that in August of 25. Working through the iterations, we would have identified and started right-of-way acquisitions, finishing that in July of 26, and then finishing design at the end of 2026. We're still on the same track for 30% and 60% design, so we'll finish the 60% design in August of next year, and that will then trigger that submittal process with the agencies for the biological assessment. And as I said previously, you can see bolded there below the schedule, it is about a 2 to 3 year process, highly variable, and it could improve. The 2 to 3 year time frame is a result of just all of the federal funding that's happening and just staff and resource availability at those levels for the consultation. So as more staff get hired, they get their backlog down. It could go faster, but that's what they're telling us right now. We'll still move forward with other activities. We will know any impacts to property, acquisitions that would be needed to support the project, and we'll work through those with property owners through October of 2026. But the big updates is the estimated completion of the biological assessment in 2028, and then final PS&E or plans, specs, and estimates, basically our final design occurring in 2028 and 2029, and then we would be at a position where we would go out to bid for construction.
So,
Sure.
want to stop there. Any questions from council? This is part of our conversation that we've been having and why I think it's important that they come talk quarterly, because that is a big shift for what we have been working and driving towards. It was one of those things as we met. We had a kickoff meeting and we meet regularly with a group of roughly 20 people, and this is one of those items that came out of it, said, hey, this is a miss, we need to address it. And so I just want to give council opportunity here if there's questions or comments on that piece, because it is a,
So before we see actual constructions, it'll be around 7 years, you think?
Yeah, it'll be in that time frame. The biological assessment, if anything comes out of that process that would require mitigations,
Yeah.
we'll have to build that into the plan, into the project, so that it gets built at the same time. So we wouldn't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Once we finish with 60% and then submit the assessment, and then start moving design forward, we could end up having to do redesign.
So
So
you have like a traffic plan for,
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. As part of our contract is to develop traffic management or traffic control plans, so that the project gets built in stages, but we work to try to maintain as close to possible traffic as it is out there right now while construction's happening. There will be impacts. Construction can be impactful in a lot of areas, but we'll do our best to stage the project in such a way that it minimizes those impacts.
thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Next slide. Yeah, so Anthony mentioned this. I'll just kind of reiterate maybe quickly. So our current activities, we have submitted the draft permit application to the county and the Diking District for review and approval. Once it's approved at the county level, then it'll go to any comments that they have in the permit. And then once that's finished, we'll get scheduled with the geotechnical team, get a driller out there, and start collecting the data that we need. Similarly, stormwater and water quality design, that's going to be a big factor on this project, maybe even more so than what we were anticipating at the beginning, just because of this biological assessment and the contaminants that need to be dealt with before they go into the Cowlitz River. The WashDOT non-access feasibility study, that's ongoing. We've got the methods and assumptions memo submitted. That'll get reviewed. Any comments come back to us and we'll address it. We're pushing that forward for completion in the fall, and then we would start our concept design after that.
just a little bit of tidbit for everyone here when we talk about the levee. So, as you go into Burgerville, you know how it goes whoop down the Lewis River Road, and that whoop down is part of the levee. So when we talk about the levee work, that is a heavy lift here. I mean, people think, oh, it's just right by the airport and we have the thing, but it continues all the way down Lewis River Road. So we have to make sure that we're not impacting that levee.
Once the non-freeway access, I'll say preferred concept or preferred alternative selection, we talk about traffic signals versus the roundabouts. And then finally, the structural design, Anthony mentioned, our colleague that's doing the analysis for the bridge, so we'll get started on reviewing record drawings and what the existing structure looks like out there today. But what we talked about last week with where we want to put the multi-use paths or shared use path under the bridge, totally doable. Not see a lot of big challenges or problems in there that we can foresee. It's a pretty simple bridge, actually. So, next slide. Cultural and historic resources, that work will get started. It hasn't fully started in earnest yet, but we've coordinated with WashDOT, and our team member will be coordinating that with the state cultural resources contact. Then we'll go through environmental permits and review for the project, getting that categorical exclusion designation, which we still think that we will be able to get. The noise analysis will look at existing and proposed or future conditions based on the improvements that we are making, and then offer up any kind of mitigations or revisions that we'll need to make in the design to account for that. Of course, utility coordination is always a big deal on every project, not just the public facilities that we have out there, the city's sanitary, water, etc., but also public or private infrastructure, your PGEs or electric utilities and communications, things like that. And I think that's it. So that's where we're at, and we'll definitely be back in 3 months rather, next quarter, to give another update as we keep moving through the process. But happy to answer any questions.
So, questions from the audience, from the community, or questions from council? This is our opportunity to have a discussion with them. If there are questions, come on up.
My name is Esther Rogan. I manage Woodland Shores RV Park. My owners couldn't be here tonight, but they wrote a letter to you guys. We are in great favor of the roundabouts and not the road that goes right in front of our the roads, the backups, from the light that goes all the way across the river, and sometimes all the way to the center when there is a wreck on the freeway. That would be right down in front of us at a standstill. We have those big log trucks that comes through. I call them Jacob barracks because I'm from a logging company. I think they're called something else, but you know what it is, the big loud noise. Well, it bothers us when it's on the bridge, but it's going to be right down in front of our house, our business. And, yeah, so I
Yeah.
want to
Absolutely. We will take that and we'll submit it into the minutes here. So
give it to you.
anyone, we will take it. I just want to clarify or provide a little more information here. So on the signaled intersection, what they're referring to is as you move towards the letterbox and that Millard Street there, that's where a proposed light would be. And then the traffic would come down around off of the bridge. And so, and you can see it on this chart here, right? And it literally would go in between the RV park and Arco and come up, and then there, all of a sudden, we now have a traffic signal there. So, I just wanted to provide clarification for everyone.
But we have a sewer lift station, which we have problems with, due to the backup of the sewer in the city. There's been many a times, we've been there for 29 years, where they literally had to tear up the road. So what if something blocks and you have to tear that road up to repair? Where's all that traffic come from? And it happens quite regularly.
Agreed. And I just, further clarification, we aren't to the deciding issue here of whether we're a roundabout or turn signals and,
I just wanted to.
yep, 100% agreed. And I'm not telling you that this comment isn't great because I appreciate it. I didn't want someone to leave here and think, oh, we're already at that deciding point. We're not anywhere close. So, any other questions or comments? I appreciate you both coming. It's always great working with you on the phone and things and seeing you in person, so appreciate
Happy
it.
to be here. Have a
Yep.
good evening. Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is citizen communications for items not on the agenda. So, I have 3 names here. I don't know if they want to talk about things that are actually on the agenda. So the first one, I believe, is Tarlos Mon. Come on up, sir.
Hello, City Councilman and Mayor. And my name is Tarlak Man, and I'm trying to start ice cream business here with a push cart here. And city employees say this is not a peddler license because I'm walking behind my push cart. I'm not driving the regular van to going around the neighborhood, then I need the regular license. And I have a video to prove if anybody want to see it.
So you're trying to do a push cart where you would
Yes.
push it through Horseshoe or,
Neighborhood and all that, and sell ice cream maybe a couple times a week, or once a week. I'm from Longview. And they say that's not the peddler. Walking with foots, that is peddler. It's same thing.
Travis? I'll be honest, this is the first time I've heard this one come up.
Yes.
I don't know anything about. I'm caught off guard on this one. I don't know anything. Sorry.
Yes, so our code currently has language that's not specifically clear for a lot of uses, including food carts and peddlers. So there is a peddler's license, there's also a solicitor's requirement, and it may be that he doesn't fall into the strict definitions that are currently in our code. I believe this would be addressed with the language that is currently before the Planning Commission, and that will be on the 18th of this month, is when the Planning Commission will be considering language. So you might need to come back on the 18th, same room at 7 o'clock.
I'm working. I just turned off my work 4 hours to become here.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I already filled up application and they denied it, you know.
Okay, so you filled out an application. I will get with City Hall tomorrow. I'll go through it, look at it, have a conversation, and I will certainly get back to you. Is it Tarlos?
Tarlak Man, I have everything filled up in here and everything in there.
Perfect, okay. And we have all those records and copies, correct?
There you
Perfect.
go.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
And just so you're aware, so a little bit of more information. So Travis at the Planning Commission here a week and a half ago went through food carts, him and Maylene, about trying to clean up the terminology and some things there. And that will be coming forward to the council with some recommendations and changes out of the food cart. So that's where that is at right now.
Okay.
And I will get in touch with you. Your phone number and everything is on there. And
Yes,
we'll have a
sir.
conversation.
Thank
Excellent.
you. Have a great day.
No, thank you for coming. I appreciate it. John.
Maybe this is the wrong place, but I want to talk about the marijuana issue coming up.
We're
You
gonna
want me
talk
to
about-
wait?
Yep, we're gonna talk about that
Okay.
on the agenda, so,
Okay.
okay?
Yep.
The last one on my list is Darlene. Okay, then we'll wait till we get to that agenda. Is there anybody in here that has something else that they want to talk about or address? Anyone online? Okay, with that, we will move on to agenda approval.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Any comments? Amanda, you want to take roll, or,
Councilmember Rounds,
Aye.
Councilmember Burke,
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall,
Aye.
Councilmember Freimark,
Aye.
Councilmember Houston,
Aye.
Councilmember Friend.
Aye.
the ayes have it. Moving into reports of city council. I'll start. Happy birthday, Melissa.
Who's that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other reports? Ms. Rounds.
Yes, I attended the AWC conference that was in Vancouver. It was a lot of fun. Also, I attended the COG meeting on Thursday at noon up in Longview. So
Anything come out of the COG meeting?
they were talking about the coalition that we voted on, and so,
Got it.
yeah.
Speaking of, decided to bar out of COG, but Travis, do you want to touch on really quickly, and because of this, the quarry piece? How it was kind of,
So the Cardai Hill Quarry?
Yep.
There was an application pending in Clark County for them to do a change that would allow them to open a mine on the other side of the river. They had issued a determination of non-significance. The city appealed that, and the Clark County withdrew the DNS and required an environmental impact statement. The applicant had a year to submit the environmental impact statement. It was not submitted, so the permit request expired, and it is no longer pending. But that simply means that they can't reapply for at least, I believe it's till 2026. So it may be back, but not until 2026.
so your COG comment got me there, and I wanted to make sure we covered it. Any other reports from city council?
Well, I wasn't at the last meeting, but I just want to say to everyone, we had a fantastic Planters Day. The community who supported all of our princesses did a fantastic job. We have some amazing businesses here and some amazing citizens who did just a phenomenal job, really going above and beyond for our princesses. And I just want to say thank you to everybody in the city and how they really came around the girls and just the event itself. So thank you.
Absolutely. That Planters Day went off great without a hit. So, anyone else? All right. Reports of standing committees. Douglas, I believe you led a meeting.
You bet, Public Works. The initial grading for the new 1.5 million gallon reservoir number 4 has begun construction. That's looking really good. It's an expensive project that we need to get completed before too long before they decommission the old one. Let me talk about the city's grease trap program just a little bit. As you all know, when grease, when kitchen grease in particular, cools off, it solidifies. When it gets into the sewers, it can cause a heck of a mess. A serious economical problem too. Just had a recent problem where a local resident incurred cost of $55,000 for a clogged up sewer. So it can be very serious and very expensive. I'd like to remind everybody that don't put your grease down the drains on any sort. Solidify it, put it in a trash can, dispose of it elsewhere, but not down the city sewer. Spring street cleaning will be finished by the end of July. Got a little bit of mechanical problems on the sweepers themselves, but that's being corrected, so expect to see them back out on the streets between now and the end of the month. That happens twice a year, by the way, spring and fall. They usually do a pretty good job, and we're looking forward to having a little bit cleaner streets. Let's see, I want to give a shout out to Mr. Nick Schmidt, who passed his wastewater collection specialist 1 exam. I love to see our city workers, especially the younger ones, improving their skills, increasing their certifications to make us more legally compliant, allowing the city to operate more competently. And it's a good thing when workers of any sort in the work for the city improve their skills. We all benefit it. And I like to see young fellows in particular get ahead. I think it's just real good, and we should give them a little shout out when they do something exceptional like that. Thank you, Riley, for promoting that and giving those guys some sponsorship and encouragement. Last thing I want to speak to is a gun club improvements project. We all know that this has been going on for a while. It's been funded. It is going to it's going to involve not only a re-grinding of the street itself and repaving of it, but putting brand new sidewalks in with ADA access, a bicycle lane even, and that's going to go all the way from Lewis River Road out to the mountain behind it, the little 300-foot hill. I don't call that a mountain. That should be a slight elevation increase. But I happen to live out there, so I'm looking forward to that. That road is bad, though. But be assured that's in the works. Expect to get on that later this fall with completion maybe as early next year or later in the year. More to come on that later. That's all Public Works is doing of an unusual manner. But understand that Public Works is an ongoing project all the time. I mean, things break, they replace things, they inspect things. They have to go through all kinds of compliances, city, county, state, and federal. And in my estimation, our Public Works employees are doing a really fine job. You see them on the road there, and stop them once in a while and thank them. I don't think they get near the appreciation we should really give them.
Any questions for Douglas or for Riley? The street repair, we've talked about it previously, just want to be clear. We contract that out with Cowlitz County. They were able to do Davidson Street before Planters Days. Both their street sweepers broke down, so that's why it's coming back around now to be done. So it was not a fault of the cities by any means. So, okay. Moving on then, reports to city officers. Travis, Riley, Lieutenant Gibbs is here for the chief. Anything that anybody would like to say? Any words of wisdom?
I think it was covered really well for
Okay.
Public Works, so.
All right, let's go into the mayor's items here. Few things here in my bi-monthly message. Woodland RV Parks. So we talked about that. I just wanted everyone to understand where we're at. That the draft language is being written. Our city attorney, Emily, her and her firm are online here. They've been great helping us on a few things. Draft language is being drafted, and then it's going to the Planning Commission. So it'll be there at the July 18th, 2024 Planning Commission. So here in about 2 weeks, From there, then it will come to council. Again, what our goal is, Woodland Shores would be short-term, Belmont Loop, long-term, and all other.
Vice versa.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I'm sorry, you're right. Woodland Shores, long-term, short-term, and everything else short-term. So, okay. So that is simple, and then we'll have a combined position with one individual there. Ultimately, at the end of the day here, I think we'll have about $200,000 in administrative cost savings for the year, which will offset our severance payments of $200,000, which was my goal in this whole shebang. So, all right. Any questions on the staffing? Back in March, where we talked about real estate, and one of the things that came out of that is we all agreed that that building of Spruce, we really weren't sure why we needed it. There was 4 individuals. Riley and his team work over there around the corner. But then we have the City Hall, 2 separate buildings. People kind of walk, manage through places. So I put it on Riley's plate when he started and said, hey, we're going to get everybody into one building. We have that building. There's no reason we can't fit 12 people in a building. And then put Spruce on the market and do something to save the residents money. We still have a $350,000 mortgage on that place. That being said, I put to work Riley and the team, and here's what we've kind of agreed to, and obviously we will be putting out an RFP coming to council, but I want people to understand what my vision and what our head is. Again, customer service is a priority. I think everyone knows that. Staff constantly looks at me and goes, yep, customer service, we're here for the community first. So this is our building, very basic, simple. You see Davidson Avenue out there. So that green section there, that's where Amanda and you could go in and you could pay your utility bill. That is green, it's a stoplight. That would be the first area that we would kind of do a remodel. We would get rid of the counter, we would put some fresh paint, buy the employees new desks, spend a little bit of money, and that would be a 2024 expense, where as the community comes in, voila. Then on the other side, which would be a 2025 expense, right now is where Travis and his team sits. We will be moving all of those individuals out, and we will be putting our public works department. So you'll have Riley and 3 or 4 of his individuals that are in that area. And so in 2024, they will be moving in there, but in 2025, I would like to spend the money to put new desk in there, refresh, put, if we decide to have Mine All Billing come in, we would put a counter in there where we would have a utility clerk that could work. We would be able to bring it all in-house, and it would be fresh. And then in January, February time frame of 2026, that red area where Gina sits, Travis's group is going to sit back there as well. We would add new paint, fresh desk, new desk, and we would have a new looking city hall. And people say, is this the money you want to spend on? Well, if we want to liven up downtown and revitalize downtown Woodland, we need to revitalize and make it so people want to come into our building, make it warm, welcome, and inviting. At the same time, by doing this over 20 months, it is 3 different budget years where we're not looking to find thousands and thousands of dollars, and we're not going crazy and redoing everything under the sun. And I think, I know I can find administrative costs to fully offset this here. We're going to get rid of Spruce, get rid of one building that we don't need, don't have a payment for, and we would turn it into a customer-friendly location at City Hall where people would say, hey, let's go down there and make our payment and find out what's going on with my utility bill. So with that, any questions, comments on what is, if you go down there, you'll see desks have been moved out already, that piece there. Don't need council approval to move everyone in there, and Riley's team getting all of that set. But we will be bringing forward a plan, RFP, and a cost estimate of what it will cost.
I got 2 questions.
Fire away.
The Spruce, will that be brought to the council to declare it surplus?
So, absolutely. One, when we get to a realtor, I have to bring that contract before we sign the contract to council. And we also have to agree that, yes, we want it, and how the route we would go to dispose.
And did we not pay $500,000 for that place, and we're gonna sell it for $350,000?
Hold on a second. Nowhere did I say 350. I don't know how much
Oh,
it's going to
okay,
sell.
okay.
I said we owe $350,000
Oh, okay.
on it.
Okay.
And we actually paid $400 and some change for that. And as part of that, we gave the tattoo parlor
Right.
2 years of rent-free.
Okay. Okay.
Near and
Wait.
dear to my heart, that building is. So,
Yeah.
that is, I mean, that is my plan here, is to vacate that building. And I would open it up here. You know, there was a little bit of angst, like, ooh, we're all going. And as we've laid this out, had conversation where people are going, people are coming around going, you know what, this is a vision that we can get onto. We will have, you know, a inviting place to work. Okay? With that, any questions, comments for me? I look forward to bringing more of this to you all. With that, we move on to our next item is consent items. Approve the minutes of June 17th, 2024, regular scheduled meeting.
Do we want to read what?
Thursday, city council or city offices will be closed. Hot summer nights and movies in the park start July 12th. And we have the side-by-sides will be at that first one. That is the event for that. Lakeside Suites has a hot dog stand that will be doing that. And then July 15th is our next council meeting, and the 18th, which I discussed, was the planning committee.
So the summer nights, they are not every week as they have been in the past, correct?
Correct. What we
Okay.
did this year is last year around the 4th of July, around Labor Day, there were certain weekends where it just was not a lot of turnout.
Okay.
And we thought to get a bigger bang for our buck, we would do specific weeks.
Okay, so I would encourage those of you who are here, pass along, check the calendar before you show up, because they are not as regularly scheduled.
There's two
Because I
Fridays.
didn't-
There's 2 Fridays
Is it?
there.
Okay, it looked a little more sporadic when I was
Yeah.
looking at it. Okay.
So 2 Fridays are not there. And again, it's on our website. If you go to Downtown Woodland Revitalization, it's on their Facebook site as well.
Okay.
Okay? Great question.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of June 17th.
Second.
With that, do you want to take a vote, Amanda?
Councilmember Houston,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall,
Aye.
Councilmember Freimark,
Aye.
Councilmember Friend,
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy,
Aye.
Councilmember Burke,
I guess I go aye.
Councilmember Rounds,
Aye.
I wasn't here.
With that, the ayes have it. Moving into the action items. The first action item is approve the vouchers for the first half of, or the second half of June.
Make a motion to approve action item D, approve the vouchers.
Second.
Any comment, questions from council or the community? With that, Ms. Hogan?
Councilmember Hall,
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy,
Aye.
Councilmember Houston,
Aye.
Councilmember Friend,
Aye.
Councilmember Freimark,
Aye.
Councilmember Burke,
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Moving into action item E, ordinance number 1561, retooling our code 2024 batch of code amendments, first reading. Is there any questions or comments from the audience or anyone on the line that would like to talk about this before I turn it over to council?
Is this where you're going to explain, Mr. Goddard, about the international code? Good.
Correct. With that, Mr. Goddard, do you want to?
Sure. So for those of you who are at home or had the opportunity to watch the video that's linked on the agenda memo, that this is a presentation that I did as practice at the Planning Commission at the last meeting. So this has come up several times over the last few years, so I figured I would just take the time and bear down and do a complete presentation on it, because there's some question about the International Building Code, International Fire Code, and the various codes that are laid out, and exactly why we use the term international. And so the history on this, I wanted to go into that. So the group that actually develops these codes is called the International Code Council. And they are the premier safety, or the premier building safety solutions provider. They are actually a non-profit, non-stock corporation that's organized as a 501c6. And so they are based in America. They have offices in Birmingham, Alabama, Chicago, Illinois, Los Angeles, California, and Washington, D.C., which is where their headquarters is. They have corporate bylaws, and those are available on their webpage, so anybody who wants to look at them can see how their corporation is structured. They were formed in 1994, and their first codes were adopted in 2004. So essentially, there have been no uniform building codes or uniform fire codes since 2004. This is the new standard. The goal, the reason why they were formed is they wanted to develop a single set of national model construction codes for throughout the United States. And this organization is essentially the combination, or this company is essentially the combination of 3 previous companies, and they are Building Officials and Code Administrators International, or BOCA, the International Conference of Building Officials, ICBO, and the Southern Building Code Congress International, the the SBCCI. And the ICC was formed at the request of stakeholders of the building industries to develop a single set of national codes, and these codes are intended to be coordinated, consistent, and comprehensive. And essentially they fall into 3 main umbrellas, and that is construction, fire, and energy codes. And the reason why they were formed essentially is as the business world is getting more international, if you had a builder in Washington State and he was ordering equipment, say, from Louisiana, or air conditioning units from Illinois, it might be built under a different code or different expectations, and they use different terms, different standards. So it might show up and you might install it in a building, but then the inspector notices that doesn't meet the code, and so they would have to recertify in multiple jurisdictions and multiple times, maybe on a case-by-case basis. So the building industry and the inspection industry recognized that this was problematic. Now, how is the ICC run? The answer to that is there are 63 board of directors, members of their board of directors. 51 of those are American representatives, 1 from each state and the District of Columbia. There are 10 Canadian representatives, 1 for each province. There's also 1 representative from Mexico and 1 representative from the Caribbean. So it is an international code because this private company also serves the Canadian provinces and Mexico and the Caribbean. Now, who are members? There are 64,000 individual members: architects, engineers, contractors, manufacturers, government officials, and students. And there are members from 41 countries who are actually members, but they are not on the board. They don't make the decisions for the codes. What does the ICC do? They do training and education. They do personal certifications. They do product evaluation and certification, content management and digitization, technical support and consulting services, and accreditation. This is important, again, as an international aspect, because if you are a contractor and say you work in California, you can get a job in Mexico, or in Washington State, you can get a job in Canada. Likewise, in Canada, you could get a job in Washington State or California or even Mexico, because it is international, because it recognizes that everybody is the same basic training on the same basic code, and it's interchangeable. So you don't have to over-regulate, or businesses don't have to seek multiple companies to do the same job in different locations. So let's talk about the building codes. There is no central governmental authority with responsibility for a national building code. So building codes are developed through a public-private partnership led by the ICC. So this is essentially the ICC process. It's what they call a consensus decision-making process. Code changes can be submitted by anyone at any time. You could submit a code change proposal when you went home tonight and you're sitting at your computer in your underwear. You could submit a code change. That code change is posted publicly, and the committee action hearing is a public hearing. So there are requirements under the bylaws that every code change that gets proposed gets publicly acknowledged and publicly reviewed. So I'm going to focus here on the committee action hearings, which is the public hearing aspect. So this is actually their decision-making process. You can see second box from the top is a proposal is raised during the individual review committee. And they do a test for consensus. They essentially say, okay, of the members of this committee, do you think this should be included in the code? If it is complete consensus, as you see on the right, it goes forwarded as a recommendation that everybody agrees it's the best policy. If the answer is no, it goes down the left side, and essentially every person who voted no has the opportunity to raise their concerns. There's no limitation to the number of concerns that can be raised, and there's no requirement that it be justified. It just has to be a concern that gets raised. And it is brought back to the top for discussion, so the group will talk about it and the pros and cons, and after the discussion is done, they again say, okay, do we have consensus? Should this be in the code? If the answer is no, then again they go back to this process. Well, what are your concerns this time? Until everybody agrees, it will not go into that recommendation status. However, after you go round and round and round, whether that's once or 10 times, at any point, anyone can say, look, this is still my concern, but I choose to step aside, and I am not going to block that code amendment. At which point, that's kind of that second pathway where they can stand aside and consensus advances that code change. Or they can say, look, I don't care what everybody says. We've gone around this 10 times. I'm going to block it, and it will not go forward. At which point, the committee keeps moving on. So there is no minority tyranny here. It is absolutely consensus before it makes a recommendation. Once that happens, it goes to the committee hearing, and public comments are sought on each of the committee actions, whether it was passed, whether it was blocked, or whether it was tabled for later consideration. It is all publicly discussed, and it is all publicly available for comments by any member of the public and by any member of the ICC. So it is a completely transparent public process. And at the end of that, they have a public comments hearing where essentially the 64,000 members or whoever's available at that meeting will vote for it. And it is a simple majority. Once it is past the committee that says, yes, this is a viable technical solution, it gets added to the code book, and that is simply just part of the code that gets published every 3 years. Now, what's important is these are free and open forums. There is decision transparency. There's a representation of all interests in this process. It is a due process, and there is an appeals process. And in the end, it is a majority consensus for whether it gets included in the book. Now, once that code is published in a new version, which occurs every 3 years, and in February we adopted the 2021 code books, the new code is published, and each individual jurisdiction gets to decide on their own what codes in that book apply to buildings in their jurisdiction. So in the case of Washington State, they have a set of codes that are adopted based upon a state building code council that recommends. Now, Washington State adopts the minimum bar. At least these codes have to be included. Woodland can then adopt that set and add anything they want. So we could adopt the state of California pool standards. We could adopt the state of Louisiana termite standards. We could adopt the state of Arizona cooling standards. We could adopt the New England snow load standards if we want. But Those are not required, they are optional. And they are optional because they were approved by a majority of the ICC members, and they are technically sound based upon the technical experts in the committee. So all of them are valid. Whether or not you want them to apply in the city of Woodland is a decision that you make on every 3 years. Now, the state of Washington, like I said, they have a state building code council, which is essentially an independent advisory board, and they give the legislature and the governor recommendations as to what's fitting for the state of Washington. So, for example, they decide what should be the adopted snow load standards and by region. So we happen to be in a region that's certain snow load standards, and then we have a certain medium temperature standards, and then we have a heat index standard, and our standard is going to be different from Spokane and Wenatchee and Seattle and Tri-Cities. Everybody looks at it regionally and decides what they want for their snow load and their wind load and yada yada yada. So it is not an international standards or decisions that are made by anybody that is outside of the United States. I know that's been an issue of concern, that this is completely a local jurisdiction standard. Oh, sorry, it looks like I accidentally, oh, yeah. So the Washington State Building Code Council has 15 members, and 5 of those are ex officio members. 2 of them are Democrats, 2 of them are Republicans, and 1 of them is nonpartisan. They have 4 technical advisory groups: fire code, building code, and then they lump plumbing, mechanical, and ventilation, and then the energy code and commercial code is the last one. And Washington State adopts that in RCW 19.27. And the city of Woodland adopts that. Let's see if I can get this to go. The International Building Code is adopted in 1404. And like I said, it was most recently adopted in February of 2024. Ordinance 1554. And then 1555 is the fire code. And we currently use the 2021 code books, even though the 2024 code books are coming out next year because of COVID and the delays and the issues. It took us a while to get from 18 to 21, and they debated not even doing a 21 going to 2024, but they decided they needed to get it done, so Washington State adopted that late last year. Now, the reason why this came up is because during the Retooling Our Code presentation last month, the question was earned, why are we adopting the International Building Code? Specifically, where that was in our Retooling Our Code batch is our zoning code has a definition for a yard, which means open unoccupied space other than a court, as defined by the Uniform Building Code, which is an unobstructed space from the ground to the sky except where provided by code. And there's some specifics in there. But essentially we're talking about a front yard, rear yard, side yard. It's the space between your building and the property line. Unfortunately, our code refers to the Uniform Building Code, which hasn't been in existence since 2004. So it's 20 years out of date, and it looks like we are trying to adopt international codes, but we're not. We're just referring to a definition that no longer exists, and we figured while we're correcting errors, we might as well correct that error. So that's why this issue came up. For all practical purposes, the definition should refer to a document that actually exists by definition. So that's why it's before you today. So in summary, the International Code Council is an American corporation. It develops code in partnership with industry and regulators. It is a transparent process, and it requires consensus technical review, overcoming all opposition. There is a majority of vote by members for applicability, and the Washington State establishes the minimum codes, but the city of Woodland ultimately retains authority to decide what kind of building codes we want to incur within the city.
I would have added one more word in summary: bureaucracy.
Yeah.
But I mean, I agree with what you're trying to do, and I appreciate Travis.
Yep.
I mean, you and I have had conversations extensively on this, and that's the reason I use the word bureaucracy, because I mean,
Yeah.
it's tied up in a lot of that. But again, I think the point of Travis's presentation here is we're not trying to go international. We're not trying to go rogue outside of the norm. It comes down to is working with staff. I've been very clear with them is let's get a lot of this stuff cleaned up and let's make sure that we are, and I just took the note, 21 code books, that we're using. So now Travis is gonna have an action item. How do we get caught up to the 2024? I mean, this is where we really need to be as a city. So, and for the group here, I sent an email to all of my council members here the other night and reminded them this is going to be on the council because we've had the discussion 3 times here. We've taken it to the Planning Commission, and Maylene did a great job. It was at the last Planning Commission again with a refresher. Again, a lot of this is changing, simple words such as that. We're not going way outside the boundaries. So, with that, continue on with questions or comments, team.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Director Goddard, question I have for you, International Building Code. Are there any other comparable codes that might be an alternate or usable instead of this particular one?
There are not. It is the industry standard. And that's why I pointed out that there's actually organizations from 41 countries that are actually members of the ICC and that use the code standards that are in this book. It is considered the premier organization for code writing. And they also do, like I said, among the stuff that they do, training and certification. So for example, if we were to start building air conditioners here in town, you would get them certified under this code so that they could be shipped internationally because they are recognized as meeting the standards that are industry standards.
So the only way the code can be changed is by the voting commission, the voting bloc, 52 U.S. members, 10 Canada, a Mexican, and a Caribbean. There are no other representatives from the other 41 countries?
That is correct. So the committee members are made up out of the board of directors, but the actual people who pass them to be included in the code is a majority of the members themselves. So the board of directors are the technical experts that determine whether or not it's a viable solution. So if you come up with a new product, say it's a new siding, you would take it to a committee, and if you can't convince all of those committee members that this siding, this new siding product is a viable solution for siding a structure, it would not be accepted by the Code Council and it wouldn't be recognized under code. And so jurisdictions, you theoretically could bring that product here to Woodland, but you would need to justify to the building official as to whether or not that product could be used because it doesn't have the seal of approval from the actual building industry.
Good to know. Sounds pretty straightforward to me.
Any other questions or comments?
Make a motion to approve ordinance number 1561, retooling our code 2024 batch of code.
Second.
With that, any discussion, conversation?
Yeah, I have some consternation on replacing the city council's responsibility. I saw no less than 5 of them in here, giving their responsibilities, their current responsibilities to the hearing examiner. Now, I'm a little Johnny-come-lately on this. I'm concerned anytime the council gives up its authority to anybody. Hearing examiner, I'm told, is a pretty fair individual, and I don't know of any problems in the past, but can somebody explain to me why we're using a hearing examiner so much and taking away the council's authority to make decisions, and they're all over this document. I'm just concerned when we lose so much authority in a single document.
I think Travis is pulling something up. I see him typing.
So this is the code section in question. What happens is in the Development Code Administration Title 19, there is a chart with the Review and Appeal Authority. There was a spelling error from a change that was made in 2019, and it appears to give both staff and the hearings examiner decision-making process. In this case, this is actually a correction of that spelling error because it is a staff decision that is appealed to the hearings examiner. So it actually doesn't give the examiner new authority. It gives them supervisory authority over staff's decision. So if staff makes a decision and the applicant disagrees and believe we broke the law or were not following the law, the hearings examiner is the independent third party who is an attorney, and he makes the legal determination as to whether or not the city followed the code.
So that explains it for staff. How about the city council references? I assume the responsible, you put the responsible person in there as a substitute. So what about the city council
So
changes?
prior to the code change, the city council was the review authority. So if staff made a decision and the applicant didn't like it, he could appeal to the political body, and the politicians on the council would be able to determine whether or not it was legal or not. And so that was changed in 2019 because the city council did not want to be in a position of making legal determinations because it incurred liability to the city. So if staff said something wasn't allowed and the council said something was allowed and a neighbor sued the city, or if staff approved something and the neighbors appealed, the city council could say, yeah, we agree that this shouldn't be approved. And if we denied the applicant, the property owner would be able to sue us for taking away their property rights. And the city council at that
In every case that the city council now has a decision making on it, is it every single one of these entries have a legal component that the council wouldn't particularly want to?
No, so there are no proposed changes that would change the authority in this case. The Retooling Our Code system is essentially a program where we identify small spelling errors or corrections that don't involve significant policy decisions, like, for example, the RV occupancy or the food cart ordinances. We don't lump those in with these small corrections because it involves a policy that we want you to be clear and make sure that you're understanding the decision you're making. A good example is last time that we came to see you, the public notice section required that we post in the Old National Bank. And we no longer have an Old National Bank in town, so we changed that to say the police department. So now you're posted at the library, City Hall, and the police station. So we no longer can post at the Old National Bank. And so those are kind of the simple corrections that we kind of put in a batch for you, and that's kind of what's before you tonight. So there is no policy decision that would take away authority of the council.
Much clearer.
Okay.
So I have a first and a second. Any other conversation before we take a vote? Amanda?
Councilmember Houston?
Aye.
Councilmember Friend?
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy?
Aye.
Councilmember Burke?
Aye.
Councilmember Rounds?
Aye.
Councilmember Hall?
Aye.
Councilmember Freimark?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Moving into action item F, authorize the city attorney to submit a ballot measure for retail sales of marijuana. So, before we get into this, I want to have a little bit of conversation. So, first off, the reason we're doing an action item versus a workshop. 2 weeks ago, I talked about a workshop. And if you look at how we run city council and we have the discussion here and where we've changed our ordinance here and we are letting individuals talk with each action item, there is no reason to have a workshop and then come back into an action item. Discussion with our city attorney was, hey, the way you're running things, Todd, and the way your council is having interaction here, there's no reason to have a workshop and come back. So that's the reason I just made the decision and put it on as an action item here. If we don't get the votes, we don't get the votes, and we move on, and away we go. So I just want to be clear where that came from a workshop piece. The second piece is people have talked about, why is this an advisory vote? Why is it, not a proposition? So working with the attorney over the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks on this, Woodland has not adopted the initiative and referendum power, and therefore we can't place ballot proposition. Still wouldn't be able to, because this is a zoning change, and zoning changes are limited to legislative authority and can't be done by through a proposition. They can only be done through city council votes. So in those conversations, I mean, again, I just want people to understand, why is this not a proposition that says, boom, if it passes, this is what happens to your city? That's not an option. I've worked extensively with Emily if there's questions on that. I want to move into the next one with ground rules here. So I know that I encourage dialogue, conversation with that. Tonight, over this action item, it will be a little bit different. You get up to 5 minutes, and at that 5-minute mark, I will say, thank you very much, have a seat. Everyone needs to be able to be heard and to be spoken. Normally at 5 minutes, I let them finish up. At 5 minutes, hey, have a great night, I appreciate you coming. So that everyone can speak. All comments will be directed to me as the mayor. If somebody wants to speak from council, they can, but again, your comments come back here to me. There's no interrupting, only speak when spoken to or asked to. I'm looking at my city council members here as well. Do not interrupt, do not overspeak, be respectful. This is a conversation that everybody has opinions about. Everybody's opinion is just as important as the other person's, and we all need to be equally respected. There's no profanity, no put downs, no derogatory comments towards anyone or any group. If I hear a derogatory comment, thank you very much, your time is done, please go have a seat. I will not let you finish your time. You have all been forewarned. And then my last one is, if there's disorderly conduct, people are saying things, I will ask you to leave, and I have Lieutenant Gibbs here to help me out. Again, we need to be respectful. We are in a community. We live here together. Everyone should feel safe in here, feel safe leaving, feel safe going to their car, feel safe going home, feel safe at the grocery store. Again, we are not all going to agree, but we can agree at the end. We all are passionate and love the city of Woodland. What it looks like may be different to us. I'm trying to drive this home, and I want people in this room, on the line, and up here as well. Each and every one of us owe it to our neighbor to be respectful. All right? With that, citizen comment first, and then we will have comment from council, and then if they want to do an action item or not is how we will run this. So I do have 2 people that signed up on the list to have a comment, and then I will open it up to individuals online and in the room. So the first one was John. So come on up, sir.
Good evening, John Kenwisher. You already answered some of my questions I was going to have about how it became an action item rather than a workshop. I appreciate that. Who wrote the action items? That's my question. I was wondering about that. And
so with that, John,
yeah.
If you are asking a question you would like me to have interaction, I can, or I can just let you talk, whatever you
Well, and if you can answer that one for me.
Emily, working with our legal.
Okay.
So she wrote the first one because the first point here is, does council want to
Right.
put an advisory vote? If they don't, we can close it up, have a good night, thank you very much. If they do, then that's where it comes back and we need to have a discussion. Do we want to have it, the change in zoning? Do you want it to be, what does that question look like?
Okay. Okay, thank you. I read through these items F and G, the package, and it's true, the city council will have to vote on item F, and if it fails, item G is no longer in play.
Correct.
So something interesting about item G, though, that I thought was interesting, as you know, the city is split between 2 counties. And I never thought about this before, but this comes up in this item here. So, if it did go to item G, if it passed, I said if, and I'm not in favor of dispensaries in this city. I'll lay that out there right now. But if it did, there's an interesting thing. You have 2 options. Option 1 is to put it in highway commercial, which is where it was before.
Which is C2, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about that is the people that live in Clark County in this city will not be able to vote for it.
Correct, for this advisory.
Right.
So those 100
Right.
residents would not be part of the advisory. 100%
Yeah.
agree.
The other interesting thing was if the city council passed this thing and it did go to a different place, it would have to go on Cowlitz County and Clark County ballots.
So wait a minute, when you say, so depending on the question, you could open it up to Clark County and Cowlitz County, correct? But if you're gonna change it to the industrial piece,
Right.
there's no C2 in Clark
Right,
County
that's-
with that.
that-
And so, again, from a budgetary standpoint,
Right.
you know, if the opportunity is not there, that's where it's like, hey, we could open the question up to Cowlitz County. only.
Right.
And again, I wanna be clear, it's an advisory.
Right, I know that.
You see what I'm saying? It doesn't come into law, so yes, there is 100 people
Yeah.
that would be,
Yeah.
you know, so.
So the next question is, how much? How is that going to be handled?
So, okay, so let me, and this isn't part of your 5 minutes, this is part of what I was gonna
Okay.
talk. And I've talked about this previously, so as a steward of the city's money, I don't think anyone can question whether or not I am a steward
Right.
and I'm cheap. So the question was brought to us here at a council meeting. It says, we would like to bring this to council, you know, and have an advisory vote. So we've been doing the research, I have been. So to get a vote, to do your own ballot during your own election, Woodland School District back in April of 2023 paid $76,676.03 when they were the only thing on the ballot. Okay? That's a lot of money. Then if you want to do it during a general election, and there's a general election in August of this year, that date to get on the ballot has long sailed, or to get on the November 5th, we have until August 6th to get something to the election office in Cowlitz County. Because of that way, it would all be sliced up. The price is around $20,000 is what it would cost the city, because there is already other election costs that are built into this.
Okay. So my last point is, I don't think we need a dispensary in the city of Woodland, only because you can go 4 miles up the road here at the casino and buy your marijuana there. And I just don't think that the citizens, the people I've talked to, are against it, having it here in the city. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next one that was on the list and then I'll open up was Darlene. Come on up.
Well, I agree with the prior person, and in reality, I've been to many of these meetings on having what I call a pot shop in Woodland, and I've yet to hear anybody speak in favor of it except the people who want to put it in. And because it's a good money maker for them. But I haven't heard anybody else support it. We vote for you to make decisions. And if every time a difficult decision comes up, you want to send it out to the people, I don't think that's appropriate at all. I don't think this needs to go to the people at a cost of $76,000 or $20,000. I think that you guys can decide that. And actually, I hope that you vote not to send it out for a vote, and also not to have it as a dispensary in Woodland. So, any questions? I've got probably 4 more minutes.
3.5.
3.5. No, it's your job to do this. You don't have to be pushing it out to a vote to the people. And you also, we don't need it because there's one close by. And you know who it affects most is the kids when you have that just sitting there. And it seems to try to make it as attractive as possible for SIDS with gummy bears and stuff like that. I just really hope that you vote no in both.
Thank you, Darlene. Now with that, I will open it up to people in the room, and I'm going to start here in the front, and we'll just work our way to the back. So that first row, any comments, questions? That second row. Miss Butler, come on up.
Yes, good evening. So I don't feel like this is just a hard decision. This is a national issue. This is big, and it's very controversial, and there have been a lot of people speaking to this issue, both pro and con. I've been at these meetings, and this has been filled with people that spoke to wanting to have this business. I haven't spoken pro or con, and I still feel that way. What I'm concerned about tonight, though, is the message you'll send to the city if you vote no. That our mayor has done an excellent job of allowing people to be heard. It would be commendable of this council to likewise allow the citizens to be heard by voting on this controversial issue. A no vote will send a message that this council is not interested in the opinions, feelings, or concerns of Woodland citizens. I think that's how it could be interpreted. And so since Melissa first suggested taking a vote and see how people feel as a pathway to move forward and get this resolved once and for all, that is what I'm in support of. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? Anyone else in that row? The next row. Darlene, Deanna's, any comments? Come on up.
Okay. Hi, Deanna Holland, Woodland resident. I felt like I would be uniquely qualified to speak on this, since this is no longer my circus or monkeys, but it once was. As a Woodlander, as a Woodland taxpayer, I am not inclined to have $20,000 of my tax dollars squandered on something that this body of government already has tons of public testimony on the topic. You have hours of public testimony. You have 3 court cases. The settlement that I brought, the 15-page settlement agreement with this city regarding a specific business opening illegally in the town. And I brought this because I wasn't sure how many of you had actually read it. When I was a council member and we entered into this agreement, it was under the assumption that it was sealed, but it was not. And so I did a public records request so that the public had access to it, because there's a lot of interesting information in here. It lays out the entire timeline and what both parties agreed upon. And so I'm sure Ms. Hogan could share that with any council member that did not have access to it or wants to refresh their memory on all 15 pages. And yeah, so I think this body of government had an opportunity in January to change law, and they chose not to. So you can continue to beat the dead horse over and over again. This has been going on since May of 2021. We are now in 2024. So it seems like if you just rolled back the footage, you would have ample testimony so that you could make a decision without spending our tax dollars to find out what you already know. And that's what I had to say. Have a little PTSD, but here I am. So if you have any questions,
I appreciate
I'm
you
available.
coming, Deanna. It's great to see you
Thank
back
you.
in here. Seriously. Any questions or comments for Deanna?
Yeah.
Sure.
Don't run off.
Sure.
Well, it was.
If it requires me to read, I will take off
No,
my
it was
glasses.
just, you were talking about being concerned with $20,000 squandering the money.
Correct.
It seems kind of ironic that you were part of a vote that cost the city $200,000.
So hold on a second. I'm going to stop here. So we're this is about respect. We're not getting.
I am.
So hold on a second.
I
We're
am
not
in the
getting any-
capacity as a citizen of Woodland. If you want to have a conversation about me as a legislator from 2020 to 2023, happy to do that. Not at this moment because I'm here as a citizen of Woodland.
Agree. So I just want to. Okay. If you have something else,
No,
Gabe.
good.
Okay. Douglas.
Yeah, I have not seen that 15-page document. Can you, in a paragraph or two, just summarize it for me? What, in your estimation, what does it say?
A lot of things. It gives a summary of the timeline starting May 21 of 2021 when a business opened illegally in our town. And then all of from 36, item 36, 38, 39, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45 are all the legal things that happened. It went before, I believe, 3 judges. Let's see. Ultimately, what this document says is that business in question can never open up in this town again. That's what it says. That was the signatures. That's what they signed to. My personal favorite, since this has never been read into public testimony, was number 66. Plaintiff has alleged has made false statements concerning a particular council member, which plaintiff has argued were malicious in intent. That was me. I spent 2.5 years being harassed constantly. So, as a citizen, I can talk about that now because I'm no longer on Team Woodland, so I can talk about it.
So I just want to be clear here. Just so since Deanna brought this forward, so this was signed, sealed. It was one of those things.
August 31st, 2021. It was actually signed earlier in that month, but it became effect.
Earlier this year, Deanna did a public records request. So through our lawyers, we reached out to the other party, made sure that he had significant notification by law that said, hey, this records request is going to be released, and therefore we released it and followed those steps. So I don't want someone to sit there and think, well, wait, it was sealed. You guys gave it away. We went
No.
through our legal procedures and did as were required as part of the public records request. So I don't want someone coming after Deanna. I don't want someone coming after.
No.
This is how it works. So.
No, towards the end, let's see, page 11 is where I was required as an individual to sign this agreement, and I refused. Because once you read through there, you'll understand why I refused.
It's great of you to come forward again.
Thank you.
You're a respected member of the council. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Thank you. I appreciate that you took the time to take it. So, anybody else?
Any other questions, comments for Deanna? Thank you.
Thanks. Have a
Appreciate
good
it.
night.
Don't be a stranger. Keep coming back.
It sounds like an AA meeting.
Anyone else in that row? Okay, we'll go back another row. John, anyone in that row? What about the last row there? Anyone in that very last row?
I don't really want to say it, but being you guys are talking about it. My name is Derek Wynn, and I said something about this a while back. I mentioned me and my son, we live here, we drive by that place every day, and it seemed like it was a pretty good business, you know. And when it was voted in, if I was to vote, I'd have voted against it, you know, but being it voted in, it's here. You know, why go 4 miles down the road? It's not 4 miles, 8 miles, more gas, more expensive, you know, all the way around. I thought the majority of the taxes, or a good part of the taxes, were supposed to go towards the schools. Now, if that's the case, I think we should have 2 of them in town. You know, it's in this, it's already here. You know, the kids, it's their parents that's going to keep them away from it. If they're going to get it, they're going to get it here, they're going to get it there, they're going to get it. You got it. That's their parents that's going to take care of that. So I'm just saying, I'm for it. You know, I'm just all about the money. And if it doesn't, I like to see 100% go towards the schools. That'd be a great thing.
Questions or comments from council? Thank you. Oh, thank you, sir. Anyone else in that row? John.
Yeah, my name is John Storr. To talk about
Can you raise your mic up, sir?
talk about the taxpayers' money. Well, I know I spent $80,000 and gave the city each year in sales tax and marijuana tax, not counting the $180,000 I paid in penalties. So no, it doesn't cost the city taxpayers nothing. I've done paid over $300,000 to the city. And no, that paper doesn't say I can't open. That paper says I can't open while it's not zoned properly. But the paper also doesn't say that I can sell the business to another person as long as I am not part of it and they can reopen. I choose not to. So I choose to keep coming here each time, and I'll continue to keep coming back. Next year's a whole new year.
Thank you, John. I do want to clarify one thing. From the city standpoint, we've collected just over $275,000. So you had mentioned 300. So I'm not to correct you, but I just wanted, you know, from a city standpoint, and it's one of the things I've looked and researched and said, hey, what did we collect? So,
Mostly in fines
yeah,
for being illegally open.
correct. Excellent. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Correct. Fines and penalties. Correct.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification, Carol. Any questions or comments from council for that, for John? Any other questions or comments from any individuals in? Sandy, come on up.
My name is Sandy Larson, lifelong resident of Woodland, business owner, previous, still engaged with a lot of stuff. But what I'd like to say is that I came from a family of 75 cousins. And I thought about this afternoon because I wasn't planning on talking. But in that 75 cousins that I had, so many of them went down the tube before they were even very old. Because in my family, there was a lot of alcohol problems. And so like the uncles and the grandpas and stuff, they had alcohol problems. But then the next generation came, and it wasn't just alcohol. It just jumped right into the bigger stuff. And I've lost so many wonderful cousins because of that crap. And I just really get sick to my stomach when I think about opening it up and trying to keep it from the young people, because you know there's so much of those young people that aren't being taken care of properly to begin with. And after the COVID and all the stuff that's on the news about how bad our kids have done, we don't need to add stuff like that. And it just makes me sick to even think about it, because they're just there for the taking, and it's just horrible. And I'm done. I really hope that it goes away. Thank you.
Any comments or questions for Sandy? You still have a couple minutes left with your 5 minutes, so come on up. Come on up, Derek.
If I understand this right, where are the kids involved in this? Kids don't go to these stores. Kids can't get into these stores. You gotta be 21. You know? You gotta be 21.
Direct, hey, well, yeah, direct your comments to me,
Okay,
sir.
but I'm just saying that, you know, you gotta be an adult at home.
I'm
Gotta,
over
you
here.
know, there's, okay, I'm sorry. You know, just, you know, look, what you just said in taxes, what in fines and stuff.
Fines and
206
penalties, correct.
Fines and 206, that was 1 year?
No, that is while he was running his
Okay,
business,
okay,
sir.
give that to the schools. Give that school, see how they like it. And see, you know, the kids, like I said, they're gonna, it's their parents that's gotta keep them away from that. Bottom line, I guess that's my opinion.
Any other questions, comments from people inside the room? So I received an email today where they asked me to actually read it. They, health-wise, weren't able to make it. And so they said, would you read it into it? So I will read it word for word. I know there are some strong opinions on advisory notes versus ballot measures, and I believe that since we've been waiting this long, we may as well do it right. In my experience, research is a good thing. An advisory vote is just another step in having our Woodland voices heard. I have an absolute faith that our current mayor and council will adjust and take action accordingly to the needs and wants of the people. Whatever the outcome, let's take the time to find out and do it right. Jennifer. So I enter that into the record. I will give that to you, Amanda. And with that, is there anyone online that would like to speak or comment? With that, I don't have anyone that's coming off mute. So I will now open it up to council for discussion. Melissa.
So I want to start off same way I started off months ago. It is not that I am in favor of having a pot shop in Woodland. That is not why I brought this to the table. First and foremost, I just want to state that. I do believe that all of us as elected officials are here to represent our community. It is something that when I moved to Woodland 7 years ago, I was always under the impression that Woodland had voted on this topic and was a hard no. In all the time that I've now served, it has been very clear under research and everything else, Woodland has never voted, never had a say as individuals of this town where they individually stood on this topic. The only vote that Woodland ever stood on was if they wanted Washington to have it legalized. This is a topic that this council before me, possibly after me, will deal with if we do not get an advisory vote or something on the books stating where our citizens are. Know where our citizens truly stand. Our demographic has changed in the town in 10 years. Our understanding of what this does has changed in 10 years since it's been around. I also work in the schools. I work with the students. I have friends who work as a vice president of a shelter down in Portland, and she is talking about how awful the fentanyl problem is, and how now it is on money that is on the street, and how it's on flyers, how you buying used cars, it's in the cars, and it is so powerful and so strong that you could pick it up and you could die, and it is being laced in with marijuana, with anything that it, as much as I don't want it here, I'd rather know that there's a store that whoever is actually using this product that is a legal product is getting something safe and isn't going to die because it's laced with something coming from Mexico and is on our streets. That a kid playing at the playground touched something that was laced with the wrong thing, and it's on a sticker that my 3-year-old niece who was just visiting picked up and died. I'm sorry if people don't agree with that, but it's time that our citizens have a voice, and we need to listen to them. It is not our job as 7 people to keep saying that it's us that make this decision. We need to have an advisory of where to go next. And if it's a no, then I will still stand by, I don't want it here. But if it's what they want, it's time for us to put this to them, because we're not doing our job by continuing to do round and round.
Any other comments from council? Douglas?
Many of you don't know me very well because I'm a new council member, elected last November. I am a Vietnam-era veteran. I've got strong opinions on many things. I was raised as a very patriotic young man, 15 uncles that were in World War II. You can imagine how that affected me as a young fella. And I learned in the military there's a lot of good things in the world and there's a lot of bad things. And the differentiation is what we should be good at. Not everything's good for everybody all the time, and vice versa. I've seen good and bad out of medical marijuana. I'd vote for a medical marijuana store close by in a heartbeat if that's what it was used for, because I've seen good come out of it. I've personally talked to dozens and dozens of members of our community, and only one or two of them, probably 1 or 2%, would be for an operation like that in our community. Even though that he might run a good business and generate some sales on it, I'm here to tell you, and I will stake my future elections on this, by the way. I don't know if anybody has done this on the council before, but I'm going to take a strong stand against this in our community. If people disagree with me, when I run for re-election next time, they can vote me out like anybody else they disagree with. But I have an honest feeling that the vast majority of people in this community are against it, and against it strongly. I think a vote is just passing the buck. And our responsibilities as elected officials is to make a hard decision. Not everybody will like, but I think that's our job. That's why we got elected. So, I'm going to vote no on this. I'll tell you in advance. And anybody that disagrees with me, please feel free to vote against me in the next election. I feel that strongly on it. I'm not a politician, you can see, but this is a strong feeling I have. I have very few like this. Personal experiences. I can't tell you. If anybody wants to come to me on a one-on-one, I'll tell you some personal stories. That'll make you cry. But that's me, and that's my stand on it. That's all I got to say for now.
Carol?
Well, everybody, I think, knows how I feel. I've been against it from day one, and I'm still against it. And I'm like Mr. Freimark. If they want to vote me out next term, have at it. So.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I'd like to say something.
Gabe?
Well, first of all, I wish people were really as much concerned about the vape shops coming into town, because I think that's way more dangerous to our kids than a pot shop would be. And I just finished my 9th round of chemo, and I don't smoke pot before I had cancer, but it helped me with sleeping and a bunch of other neuropathy. I mean, it was the only thing that I could take to go to sleep half the time. And if you see the people that are in those places, it looks like my dad or my uncle or they're not drug addicts. I mean, people portray it to be this awful place, and they don't put any advertising on the outside of the store. You wouldn't even know what it is if you drove by. And I just think that from people I've talked to, I've lived here my whole life, and I think people would vote in favor of having it, and having it in the commercial district is better because it keeps it farther away from the school. If you put it in light industrial, it can be within sight distance of the school, and if you want to keep it away from the kids, C2 would be the way to go. I just think people need to be able to vote. The state of Washington voters already approved it, so we should at least give the voters here a chance since it's already been approved in the state. That's how I feel.
Okay. Any other discussion? Any other comments?
I'll throw comments out. So, what a night to join council.
Welcome.
So personally, I'm a father of 2 kids. They're in the community, and that's something that's heavy on my mind with this topic. And also, when I decided council was the right thing that I should come out for, I sought that as an opportunity to be a voice of the people of the community. So I struggled with this a lot over the last, 4 days, I think. Yeah. So struggled with it a lot and felt like, gosh, if the people of Woodland really don't want it, then this is an opportunity to say no and shut it down for good versus continuing the conversation for eons versus, and I, again, see all sides of it. And I also am not saying for or against opening it, but I am for giving people a chance to formalize yes or no and make that voice heard. So that's just my 2 cents, and that's coming from a father of 2 kids in the community, and weighing all of what that means to them and to the schools and everyone around them. Like Gabe mentioned, though, I think industrial area is a good place to be, away from schools, away from other areas, but yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Welcome. Any other comments, questions from council here? Fire away, Terry.
Yeah, I have some notes here to share with you. 2 children are walking down the street. One says to the other, "See that place? That's where you buy marijuana stuff." The second child says, "My mom says that marijuana is on the federal schedule of illicit drugs." The first child says, "That's true. It is on the federal schedule of illicit drugs, but it must be okay because the city council approved it to be here and the city staff issued a license for it. So it must be okay." The second child says, "I see what you mean. It must be okay." That's how you stumble a child. Cause a child to make an error in judgment on a moral issue. This is a moral issue. The Bible tells us in 3 Gospels, for emphasis, Jesus said to his disciples, and I'm quoting, "Things that cause people to stumble are bound to come. But woe to anyone through whom they come. It would be better for them to be thrown into the sea with a millstone tied around their neck than they should cause one of these little ones to stumble." This is a moral issue. Do we want to be the council that opens the door to cause our children to stumble? Do we want to be the council that throws out over 100 years of Woodland's wholesome heritage in which we have never authorized the sale of any illicit drug? And do we need an advisory vote to tell us right from wrong? We have a conscience for that. There are only 2 choices in a moral issue: right and wrong. And the right answer is no. So when Mrs. Hogan takes the roll call, just say no.
Can I say something too also?
Oh, yeah.
First of all, you have to be 21 to go in there. So if you want to say this about this, you should be saying the same thing about a bar we have on in every corner in town, that kids or a marijuana shop. I don't understand how the kids how it becomes a moral issue. Teach your kids what's right from wrong, then you shouldn't have to worry about that issue. I mean, I educate my kids, and none of them have had pot smoking problems, or it's just, I just really think you need to educate kids, not turn it into a moral issue, because kids can't go in there.
I'd like to call the question.
Melissa, and then I'll go to JJ.
Well-
I'll go to Melissa, and then I'll go to you, JJ.
And I think that if Woodland was a completely dry town, this would be no question. I would say absolutely no all day long. But we are not a dry town, and if we're going to offer alcohol and vape and cigarettes in our stores that are way more accessible than a pot shop is, we have got to get citizen opinion on where we stand as a citizen's point of view. And then take the vote again as a council, but we're running in circles. So I think it's time for us to put it to the ballot, put it to the citizens, and really see where our town stands instead of speculation. That's all I'm asking. And with that, I would say call the vote.
So hold on a second, I think JJ had a comment.
I'll call the question now.
You what?
He calls
Call
question,
the question.
Okay.
which means
Let me go.
Right, I realize that. I was just trying to figure out. I thought, nothing else?
That's it.
Okay. With that, I have to have a motion, and I have to have an.
I'll make a motion to.
Motion to vote.
Motion to approve action item to authorize the city
The city attorney.
the city attorney to submit a ballot measure for retail sales of marijuana. Action item F.
I'll second.
I have a first and a second. Any other discussion about this before we go to Amanda for a vote?
I just think people need to be able to have their voice heard, not just the same thing happening with people deciding for everyone. What's it gonna hurt to let the people have the final say? If they say no, then it's a no. But I think they need that opportunity.
Conversation with you in 30, 35, 40 years when your kids are grown. You got grandkids and great-grandkids. That's all I need to say.
I would love to.
With that, Ms. Hogan, let's take a vote on action item F.
Councilmember Rounds.
no.
Councilmember Freimark.
No.
Councilmember Friend.
Aye.
Councilmember Hall.
No.
Councilmember Burke.
No.
Councilmember Houston.
Aye.
Councilmember Dowdy.
Aye.
So the noes have it, so that takes that action item, and that takes action item G off as well. With that,
Motion to end meeting.
Second.
with that, it is 9:01, and the meeting is now adjourned.
Recording stopped.